Thank you. I hope you're this happy in an hour. All right, so if you pay attention to me, this information has the ability to improve everything in your life because you know brains run the world. They run the stock market, the local market, huge corporations. There we go. Mom and pop shops down the street. Brains run governments, although maybe not that well. They run schools, churches, families. This is my family. These are my 3 grandbabies. And you. Brains run superheroes. When superheroes have brain injuries, trouble happens. But we rarely think about the brain. Why? Because you can't see it. You can see the wrinkles in your skin, or the roots in your hair, or the fat around your belly. You get disgusted with yourself, and then you do something about it. But because nobody looks at the brain, no one cares about it. And did you know Alzheimer's disease starts in the brain 30 to 50 years before you have any symptoms? That means you literally have no time to wait to get healthy. Some of you are waiting until you get sick before you start getting well. Now, how crazy is that? I mean, think about it with me. Do you really have to have a heart attack before you get serious, or do you really have to have a stroke? The sign of intelligent life is you know trouble could be out there, and you do something to prevent it. Success in anything you do, whether it's being a superhero, or running clinics, or running a family, or trying to build a business, or trying to have a better mind, starts with a healthy brain. So here's the big idea for my talk, is that with a little forethought, which comes from your prefrontal cortex, you know, that front third of your brain that's largest in humans and in any other animal by far, right? The prefrontal cortex is 30% of the human brain, 11% of a chimpanzee's brain, 7% of your dog's brain, unless your dog is Tinkerbell. My dog, it's not even close. 3% of the cat's brain. This is what makes us human, is our prefrontal cortex and forethought. So if you have forethought and a brain smart plan, you can boost your brain, improve your superhero mind, and everything else in your life. So I'm going to give you 7 really simple steps. I mean, it's sort of the cool part about my work is since I'm not that smart, I have to make it really simple. And the first one is brain excellence. That's your competitive advantage. You want an advantage in your life? Start taking care of the organ that makes every single decision that you have. So this is one of my favorite pictures. Do you think boxing is a good brain sport or a bad brain sport? Your brain's involved in everything you do. How you think, how you feel, how you act, how you get along with other people. As Jim has said, we've looked at over 73,000 scans over the last 21 years. And it's very clear to me, your brain is the organ of judgment, character, personality, intelligence, planning, and every single decision that you make. And when your brain works right, you work right. And when your brain is troubled, you are much more likely to have trouble in your life. So these are the studies I do at the Amen Clinics. They're called brain SPECT scans. SPECT, S-P-E-C-T, which means, of course, you should have some respect for your brain. Healthy on the left, full, even, symmetrical activity. SPECT looks at blood flow and activity patterns. The image on the right is an alcoholic's brain. Alcohol is not a health food. And even though this principle's really simple, when your brain works right, you work right. And when your brain is troubled, you have trouble in your life. If you really think about it with me, it is very disturbing. Because this principle actually directly attacks the notion of free will. Most of us think, oh, we all have 100% free will. Well, free will is a brain function, and if your brain's not right, your judgment, impulse control, your ability to follow a diet is not going to be very good at all. So I wrote a couple of books, Change Your Brain, Change Your Body, and The Amen Solution, about the connection between physical health and emotional health. And in it, I argued that stapling your stomach for obesity is working on the wrong organ. It's your brain that pushes you away from the table telling you that you've had enough, or it is your brain that gives you permission to have the 6th chocolate chip cookie that makes you just, what, hate yourself afterwards. With a healthy brain, people are happier, physically healthier. It's very clear because you make better decisions. You're wealthier because you make better decisions, wiser, and you're more successful. When your brain is not healthy for whatever reason, you've had a traumatic brain injury, your house had a flood, and then you had mold exposure, which is damaging to your brain. That you have depression running rampantly in your family, so you've experienced depressive episodes, it's clearly not good for your brain. You're sadder, sicker, poorer, not as wise, your decisions are not as good, and you are less successful. So I want you to stick with this idea. When your brain works right, you work right. And when your brain is troubled, you are much more likely to have trouble in your life. And the reason for my new book, Use Your Brain to Change Your Age, is what we've seen looking at these tens of thousands of scans is over time, your brain gets less and less and less and less active. And now that I'm 57, I hate that. But it's just true. You know, as you age, as your skin falls off your face, the same process is happening inside your brain. So here, for example, is a 55-year-old scan, typical. We just see this low energy happening in the brain. And here's a typical 82-year-old scan. They look awful. And here's the scan of my friend, Dr. Doris Rapp. Doris is an 82-year-old pediatric environmental physician. She's a pediatric allergist, and she just has a drop-dead gorgeous brain. And so how does that happen? And if you knew Doris, Doris exercises. She eats in the kind of way, I have a very special treat for you because I'm going to do this for an hour, but for half an hour, Tana, my wife, is going to teach you how to eat to have a brain just like this. So you want to pay attention because she is not only beautiful, she's like one of the smartest women you'll know. And doctors, we tell you what to do. Nurses, Tana's a nurse, they tell you how to do it, and then they hold your hand in the process. So it'll be very special. We do this together, and it's special for me. But so Doris eats right. She's passionate about her work. She makes sure her environment is clean, and she's not kidding about her health. See, you have to be a warrior for the health of your brain. In our society, we're totally going the wrong way. I was driving to LAX not too long ago, and I was on the 405 going through Long Beach, and on the right, there was a billboard for a huge fast food sandwich at AM, PM. It's called the Tower of Torta, 1,800 calorie sandwich. And I just looked at it and I went, you're kidding. And then as I turned my head to the other side of the freeway, I saw a billboard for losing weight with lap band. Now, how crazy is that? Our society is trying to get our inner children completely out of control, and then we're going to have surgery to get them back in control. Good for the economy, really bad for your health. Okay. So who has brain envy? Anybody? Not yet? Okay, stick with me. Okay, step number 2, why do you care? If you don't get this step right, you'll never get truly healthy. Why do you want to have a great brain? So my motivation's really cool. I mean, and 2 of them are here. I have a wife I adore, an 8-year-old who's not only beautiful, but she's smart and funny as can be. I have 3 other kids. I have 5 grandchildren. I want a great brain because then I can enjoy all the good things in my life. So right now, I want you to write down 5 reasons you have to have a great brain. So these are mine. I need great energy. If I'm going to change the world, if I'm going to make the biggest impact on the world I can, which is my goal, I have to have energy. And I want to look great. I'm totally vain. I like being able to get into a size 30 Boss jeans. You know, and Boss, they're not like Levi's. They don't cheat on the size. You know, a size 30 is like really a size 30. You get Levi's, they're sort of 32 because, you know, they just don't want you feeling bad. And Boss just doesn't care. I want to make great decisions. You know, I have a lot of people who depend on me. I want to be a great role model. And I totally want to avoid the dinosaur syndrome. You know what that is? There are 18 studies now that show as your weight goes up, the actual physical size and function of your brain go down. Now that should just scare the fat off anyone. When I read that first study, I dropped almost 30 pounds. I'm not having a smaller brain if I can help it. So this is Terry. Terry heard me speak, and she came up to me after the lecture, and she said, Dr. Amen, before I heard you speak, I knew I was fat, and I knew I was ugly. But I always thought I had a great brain. Now, you were telling me my behavior was ruining that. And my father just died of Alzheimer's disease. You know, obesity doubles the risk for Alzheimer's disease. And given that I still had a brain I could value, in the last year I've lost 90 pounds. I was like so excited for her. I never want to demean anyone who's overweight. Our society is just totally pushing wrong food and wrong habits down our throats. But when you get the information, now is the time to make an important decision to become a warrior for the health of your brain, which means you have to be a warrior for the health of your body because it's totally connected. So as you write down those 5 reasons why you have to have a great brain, I want you also to write down what anchor images you can use to remind yourself why this is absolutely essential. So these are images that remind you immediately why you have to be healthy. So, you know, what's the difference between grabbing an apple or a piece of apple pie? And these are my anchor images. So I told you I have 5 grandchildren. And one of the babies, Emmy, who's 15 months old, was born with a very rare genetic microdeletion syndrome that causes pretty severe developmental delays and a horrible seizure disorder, along with kidney problems and often heart problems. And it's a disaster. And it's very clear, in fact, Emmy's in the hospital today, that Emmy's life will be better if my brain is better. Because this is not something that's going away. And it's very stressful for my daughter, Brienne. So when I put these images up for me, it's like you have to make the right decisions, because given you're a medical doctor and a brain doctor, you need to help supervise what happens for Emmy. You with me? So when I think of the Rocky Road ice cream, it just doesn't hold a candle to I have to be healthy, because with a better brain, I help people in my life make better decisions. If I just gave in to the desire of the moment, then I'm increasing things like inflammation in my brain, decreasing its function, and then I'm not as smart. I mean, that's what happens. As your brain gets less and less active, your IQ sort of goes with it. So I want you to find that image for you that just reminds you. You know, whether you're doing it for you, you're doing it for your husband, you're doing it for your wife, your kids, your job, your church, your mission, whatever. You have to know why. Because if you don't have the why, it becomes too hard. Even though I'll tell you, it's much harder being sick than making some simple decisions to be well. Number 3, you have to know about the health of your brain. Most people never look, so they don't know, and they're blissfully going on in denial. Well, let me introduce you to Andy. So Andy McGill, he is actually, I think he's chapter 3 in the new book. I centered the new book around 10 really cool stories, and Jim is actually chapter 5, because I love Jim and I love his mission. It's about lifelong learning. Well, Andy's about brain envy. Andy is a professor of business at the University of Michigan, and I lectured there in Ann Arbor about my work with brain imaging and ADD. And he had a daughter who has ADD, and it's like, well, I'm going to bring her to the clinic. And what he decided, and a lot of parents do this, so that my child doesn't feel singled out, I'm going to go get my brain looked at too. So we're going to do this together. And when Andy came to the clinic, he was 53 years old, and his brain looked like he was 100. And it was actually bad for 100. So healthy on the left, Andy's on the right, and I'm like, Andy, what are you doing? He's like, what, Dr. Amen? I said, what are you doing to hurt your brain? Nothing. Now, I already saw that he was 100 pounds overweight. I'm like, do you drink? He said, not very much. Now, I've been a psychiatrist for 30 years. And what I learned is when you interview people, you always have to ask the follow-up question, which is, what does that mean? He said, well, not very much. He said, you know, I have a drink or two when I get home from work, and I have a drink or two with dinner. I usually have a nightcap, and I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, every night. He said, yeah, but it's never a problem. I'm like, dude, it's a real big problem. And he left my office with brain envy. He's like, oh my God, I significantly raised his anxiety. Can you imagine a psychiatrist significantly raising people's anxiety? I've already probably raised yours a little bit. Good, because did you know that the don't worry, be happy people die the earliest from accidents and preventable illnesses? The people who are concerned about their health, they live longer than everybody else. So he got serious, lost 100 pounds. In fact, at 64, so 11 years later, his cardiac fitness level is in the top 1% of people 20 years younger than he is. He went to medical school in that 10 years, 11 years, and he doesn't like hanging out with people in their 60s. He said, they think too slow. And so he came back and he wanted to do another scan. He said, I just want to see. His brain literally aged backwards. So if you have been bad to your brain, there's great hope you can be better. But now is the time to start. If you believe what I said, that Alzheimer's disease actually starts 30 to 50 years before you have any symptoms. So our method for getting people well is actually really clear. At the top, you see it says comprehensive assessment. And you see those little 4 circles. And the 4 circles stand for a biopsychosocial spiritual evaluation. I need to know about your biology, which is where the brain scans come in, but I also need to make sure your thyroid's working well, and that your diet's good, and that you exercise. Psychological is how do you think? You know, what are the significant developmental events in your life, and how do you think? So many people who struggle with anxiety and depression are filled with what I call ANTs, automatic negative thoughts, the thoughts that come into their mind automatically and ruin their day. And the social circle is about how are you connected? You know, how's your relationship with your husband, your wife, your children, the people at work, your friends, your church? Because the more connected you are, the healthier you are if you're connected to healthy people. And the spiritual circle is, what does your life mean? Why do you care? What's your connection with the past, with the future, with the planet, with God? Because if there's no connection, you're not nearly as healthy as you can be. And then we add imaging, because how the heck would I ever know about your brain unless I actually looked at it? You know, psychiatrist, I'm a double board certified psychiatrist. We are the only medical specialists that never look at the organ we treat. I irritate my colleagues and say, we make diagnoses. In fact, you know, half of you are taking psychiatric meds. They put you on those exactly like they treated Lincoln for depression in 1840. You talked to the doctor, and he looked at you. Oh, you have these symptoms, take Lexapro. Oh, you're anxious, take Xanax. And that's crazy. Because this is what, 172 years later? We're still making, no other medical professionals act like we do. Cardiologists look, orthopedic doctors look, your gastroenterologist looks, your endocrinologist looks, your gynecologist look, everybody looks, psychiatrists guess. It's crazy. We have to completely change this because, you know, our outcome studies, when you actually look at the outcomes in psychiatry, they have not improved in 50 years. It's a disaster. We need to do a better job. And then, of course, you have to add brain healthy habits, because if you're overweight, you're more likely to be depressed. If you're not exercising, you're more likely to get Alzheimer's disease. If you're drinking too much, you're more likely to be depressed and have Alzheimer's disease. So you have to add that piece. But our success rate at the Amen Clinics is 2.5 times better than the psychiatric industry in general. We're just getting ready to publish a paper on this. We're very excited because we get to cheat. We add imaging. How do I know unless we look? So could we have prevented this tragedy? When I knew I was coming to San Diego to give this talk, I put this slide in. So you know, 2 weeks ago, Junior Seau killed himself. And he killed himself in the NFL way of killing yourself. It's now becoming a pattern. Shoot yourself in the chest so you can donate your brain for science. Now, how stupid is that? Go get your brain scanned while you're alive and see if you can fix it. We have scanned and treated 117 NFL players at the Amen Clinics, including dozens of hockey players and baseball players and soccer players and skiers, snowboarders. Brain injury is not a minor thing. And when we started our study, the NFL was in denial, active denial about concussions causing long-term brain damage. And they were left and right denying their players' disability. You know, 20 years later, the players would say, I'm depressed. I just got diagnosed with dementia. I'm impoverished. I need help. And they just went, it's not our problem. It's your problem, which really sucked. But I got to work with a number of them, and I decided that somebody had to do a large-scale study that people would take seriously. So we did it at the Amen Clinics. This is the largest study ever on professional athletes and concussions, and the results were terrifying. If you look at the blue on those brains, those are all the areas of highly significantly decreased activity, which basically meant their whole brain was low in function compared to a healthy group. Now, my problem is, because I funded this study, I didn't think through it, because as soon as our first 5 players came through the office, we're not like typical researchers, we're clinical people. We get our excitement from making people better. So when we saw it, we couldn't say, oh, bad for you. You with me? So then we added a second arm to the study. So we went, well, can you take someone who has had up to 20 or 30,000 hits to the head, who is cognitively impaired and depressed, and can you make them better? And since I was paying for the study, I did it in the cheapest way I could. We taught them to avoid bad things and do good things. We put them on a multiple vitamin that I designed, high-dose fish oil, and a supplement called Brain and Memory Power Boost, those 3 things, along with avoid bad, do good. That was it. 80% of our players showed dramatic improvement on our program. 69% their memories got better, 53% their attention, 40% their mood and motivation, and 25% even reported their sleep was better. We published this last year. We're so excited because it's not just about football players, it's about the 300,000 soldiers coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan who come back with brain injuries, that you can have a positive impact when you educate them about brain health and put them on some simple supplements. And if it's not good enough, of course you can use hyperbaric oxygen treatment, you can use medication, you can use anything you can think of, but if you never look, you never know, and then it's easy to call them bad people. Oh, well, you know, he's just not that smart. Or he's got a character problem. Of course he has a character problem. What's the organ of character? It's your brain. So one of our players, Randy Podal, who played for Stanford, they don't let dumb football players go to Stanford. You know, Stanford's one of those rare places where you actually have to pass the test. But, you know, his memory scored at the 5th percentile. So what that means is 95% of people his age scored better than he did. After being on our study, he's at the 53rd percentile. You know, that's 1,000% improvement. 5th percentile, you really are not employable. 53rd percentile, you can go to work and support your family. So here's 9 ways imaging will change everything you do. First thing, you'll get brain envy. So this is my first scan on the left. When I first saw it, I was 37 years old and I didn't like it very much. So I started changing things in my life. I started eating better and exercise. And 20 years later, my brain looks younger. You'll be very careful with psychiatric medications. You know, I was taught to use them, and I was good at them. But when I started looking at my patients' brains on some of them, like Xanax or Valium or Ativan, I'm like, yuck, it looks like they're alcoholics. But they weren't. You won't let your kids play tackle football. Now, how is that the sign of intelligent life? So when does the brain finish developing? Anybody know? It continues to develop throughout your life, but it gets radical development until about the age of 25 for girls and about 28 for boys. We're always behind. It's just how it is. We're behind and we die early. How is that helpful? If your brain isn't finished developing until you're in your mid-20s, why in God's name would you ever let your child hit a soccer ball with their head or put their skull inside a helmet and slam it up against other people? It makes no rational sense. You take sleep apnea more seriously. You know sleep apnea, that's where people snore loudly, stop breathing at night, tired during the day, doubles their risk for Alzheimer's disease. You'll take your weight more seriously. I published my second study on the dinosaur syndrome in the Nature journal, obesity. We took our normal group, overweight, normal weight. Overweight folks, less activity in the prefrontal cortex. Now you could go, so what caused was having low prefrontal cortex activity the cause of obesity, or did obesity actually cause it? And I think it probably goes both ways. Whatever it is, I'm not going to be obese if I can help it. You'll stop thinking of depression as one thing. I was in a debate recently at the American Psychiatric Association, because what I do is considered controversial by some of my, what's the right term? Not quite forward-thinking colleagues. I think I call them the Flat Earth Club. Because if you just look at the statistics, large-scale study sponsored by the National Institute of Mental Health on 4,000 people who have major depression. Given an SSRI, classic standard antidepressant Celexa, 31% of them got better after 14 weeks. So what's the standard placebo response? It's 30%. Are you really going to take a medicine for a 1% chance of improvement? Now, I wouldn't recommend sugar pills because sugar is bad for you. But you could have kale pills or something, and that would probably do better. I call it psychiatry's dirty little secret, except now 60 Minutes is reported, so now it's our dirty laundry that's airing. And the reason that antidepressants don't work is because we think of depression as a single illness, which it's not. Depression is a symptom. It's like chest pain. And how many causes of chest pain are there? Like there's 150 different causes of chest pain. I just saw a woman recently in our Washington, D.C. clinic, and she came because she had memory problems and she was depressed. But when I checked her thyroid, it was completely low. So if I would have just started her on Prozac, I would not do her any good at all. I would, in fact, have made her worse. So you have to know your type. And in my books, I've talked about 7 different types of anxiety and depression, 6 types of ADD, 5 types of obesity, and 6 types of addicts. You have to know your brain type. You'll think about the early detection and prevention of Alzheimer's disease. Scans just scare the socks off you. Because this person is 64, his mother died of Alzheimer's disease, and he said, well, I'm here to be evaluated because of my mom, but I think I'm just normal. He said, I really don't remember things very well, but I'm 64. That's normal. No, that's a sign of trouble. If you're having memory problems in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s, that's not normal. That's the sign your brain is suffering. And we've even seen our 90-year-old football players show significant cognitive improvement, and their injuries happened 7 decades before we saw them. So you can even reverse it later in life. You'll be more cautious in handing out personality disorder diagnoses. So if somebody calls you borderline, first thing you should do is go get a brain scan and figure out why your behavior is so bad. And you'll think about the brain when seeing difficult couples. This is a couple we saw recently. He was missing the left front side of his brain. And I don't know, how many of you are married? Being married's hard enough with a good brain. But if you're missing part of your frontal lobe, you're going to find it a real challenge. Or at least your wife will be finding it a real challenge. All right, so I think it is just critical to know about the health of your brain, and by 2020, I think brain scans will become like colonoscopies. When I turned 50, my doctor wanted me to have a colonoscopy. I asked him why he didn't want to look at my brain. Isn't the other end of my body just as important, I said. So now I realize not everybody can get scans, so we actually, on our website, amenssolution.com, it's our community site, we developed some very cool, sophisticated neuropsychological assessments to test the health of your brain. We'll test your type, along with attention, reasoning, memory, reaction time, and so on. And then based on how you score, we'll give you exercises in the form of fun games to strengthen your brain. Okay, the essence of brain health is 2 things, 3 things. Brain envy, avoid bad, do good. So what are the things to avoid? That should be obvious. Drugs and alcohol. I know, some of you are going, how much can I drink? It's like the most important thing in your life. Well, can I have one, two, how many? All right, here's the answer. Normal size glasses. I used to live in Germany. They have 40-ounce beer steins. That does not count as one. Normal size glasses, 1 or 2 a week. People who drink every day have smaller brains. And when it comes to your brain, size matters. Women who drink every day have a higher risk of breast cancer. And do you know what chemotherapy does to your brain? As chemotherapy kills cancer cells, guess what it's doing to the normal cells? It's killing them too. You want to do whatever you can. You want to be on a cancer prevention program your whole life. Obesity we talked about, insomnia, sleep apnea. Nicotine's no good, constricts blood flow to the brain, as does much caffeine. You can hear it now. Oh, great. Alcohol's gone, caffeine's gone, I feel like dirt. What does he expect me to do? You will only feel like dirt for a few days, and then your energy will actually go up. The reason we're hooked on caffeine is because we're all sleep deprived. On average in America, we get 6.5 hours of sleep at night. Less than 7 hours, lower overall blood flow to your brain. It's not good for you. So we use caffeine to get up, alcohol to go down. If you get rid of both of them and you just sleep an extra hour, they actually did a study in Minnesota with teenagers. Teenagers who slept just on average 1 hour less than their peer group had a much higher incidence of depression and suicide. Sleep is critical. So as you have brain envy, I want you to have sleep envy and protect getting at least 7 or 8 hours of sleep at night. Diabetes and hypertension. Tana's actually going to talk about that for a little bit. Pay attention to the images she shows you. You don't want them to be you. Low hormones, thyroid, testosterone, estrogen, vitamin D. It's a vitamin, but it's actually a hormone in how it works. 2/3 of our country is low in vitamin D, the same number of people who are overweight or obese. And did you know when vitamin D levels are low, the hormone leptin that tells your brain to stop eating doesn't work anymore. So all of you should know your vitamin D level like you know your cholesterol level or your blood pressure. Processed diet. The food you eat matters. Tana's going to hammer that home. Chronic stress. Now, I want you worried but not freaked out. Untreated depression. Lack of exercise. You want to have a superhero mind? You need to have a superhero body. The stronger you are as you age, the less likely you are to get Alzheimer's disease. Bad decisions. I mean, really, the essence of health. They did a study of 1,548 10-year-old children, then they followed them for 90 years. It's the coolest study. And what they found, the #1 factor associated with longevity was not happiness or a lack of worry. In fact, as I told you, in that study, the don't worry, be happy people died the earliest. It was conscientiousness. If you said you were going to show up and you actually showed up, you are likely to live longer than everybody else. And if you worked hard and were successful and had passion, you also lived longer than everyone else. So as people my whole life, they tell me I'm like a workaholic. I'm like always working, love my work, obviously passionate about it. And they'd like call me bad names about it. Now I can stick my tongue at them and go, I'm living longer than you. Because that's a sign of a brain that's engaged. They live longer, according to this study. Unhealthy peer group? You got to pick your friends and your family wisely. Because the health of your friends and your family determine how long you live. So it doesn't mean you have to get rid of your whole family and all of your friends. Be the leader for change in your family. And then not knowing about your brain's own vulnerability. Andy had no idea until he looked, and his brain was headed for serious trouble. You don't want that. Okay, so those are some things to avoid. What are things to do? Make good decisions. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. A positive peer group. The fastest way to get healthy is to hang out with other people who are healthy. That is the fastest way because habits are contagious. Clean environment, physical health, healthy weight. Oh, and when it comes to weight, what I would like all of you to do, in fact, Jim, next time what we need to do is have tape measures here. Because I want you to measure your waist. I don't want you to tell me what your waist is because you're going to lie to me. I just know it. We did 100 consecutive people. What's your weight? 98 of them were wrong. They underestimated their waist size. Your waist should be half your height or less. So I'm 5'6", that means I'm 66 inches tall. My waist should be 33 or less. One of my football players, Anthony Davis, he's very special to me. He's called the Notre Dame Killer. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame. And I'm like, hey, Anthony, what's your waist size? And he puffs out his chest. It's 35. I was like, come here. Where's your belly button? He points, put the tape measure around it. I'm like, it's 42. You calling me fat? You calling me fat? Like, I'm just telling you the number. You have to lose weight. Sleep, new learning. So this is a major strategy to prevent Alzheimer's disease. You being at this conference this weekend and engaging in the exercises, the information that Jim is bringing to you, it's a major strategy. You want to keep your brain learning new and different things. Now, if you're really good at crossword puzzles or word games, just doing more crossword puzzles or word games is not going to help you. So if you are like my wife and you will just kick everybody's butt in Boggle, just continuing to kick their butt is not that helpful for you. Are you listening? She kills me in Boggle. Great diet, so pay attention to Tana. Wise calorie spending. You overeat, you overspending, you get bankrupt. But it's not as simple as calories in versus calories out. She's going to talk about that. Got to get rid of the ants, the automatic negative thoughts. I do this all the time in my office with patients. Don't ever believe every stupid thought you have. You want to have a natural antidepressant? Walk 45 minutes, 4 times a week. Walk like you're late. Take high-dose fish oil, and don't believe every stupid thought you have. All 3 of those, compared individually head-to-head to antidepressants, were equally or more effective. So how simple is that? Manage your stress, exercise, and some simple supplements, multivitamin, fish oil, vitamin D, and some simple brain nutrients. So Carlos came to see us. He's 5'10", 266 pounds. He's a big boy. And it's the belly fat that really is the worst fat because it also increases hypertension. Hypertension lowers blood flow to the brain. He was angry, pretty irritable. He's in construction in this economy, not a good thing. He's fighting with his wife. He's smoking. He sees his brain. It's like yuck. Develops brain envy. We teach him how to get healthy. 30 weeks later, he's lost 50 pounds. He's just like transformed himself. I don't want you doing this in 4 weeks. I want it to take a while so that you develop new habits, you develop new patterns in your brain. So if it takes you a year to get healthy, God bless you. If it takes you 2 weeks, it won't make any difference. You'll just gain the... And the problem with losing weight quickly is you've reset the little thermostat in your brain, and now you can't just eat 1,800 calories and maintain your weight. Now you have to eat 1,600 calories to maintain. So just do it once and do it right. But the coolest thing about Carlos is his brain was better. I love that. Change your brain, change your life. Okay, resilience and creativity. This is my favorite quote of the year. The best way to reduce stress in your life is stop screwing up. Most of the stress in your life comes from the bad decisions that you make. Now, obviously, not all of the stress in your life, but most of the stress comes from the bad decisions you make. So, if you really want to get self-control, how do you do that? Got to know what you want. So, I want you to put those 5 reasons that you have to have a great brain up where you can see them every day. And we have an exercise on amonsolution.com called the One-Page Miracle. On one piece of paper, on one form, write down what you want in your relationships, your work, your money, your physical, emotional health. What do you want? And then ask yourself every day, does my behavior get me what I want? So if I want to have a kind, caring, loving, supportive relationship with my wife, and I get an impulse to say something stupid, it's like, does it fit? Probably not. Wait till it does. It helps you. Goal-directed behavior. But you know, when the trouble happens, it's if you've not eaten. If you have a low blood sugar, you then have low blood flow to your prefrontal cortex. And low blood flow improves your decisions or decreases your decisions? It decreases your decisions. You have to have breakfast. Those of you that are saving the 300 or 400 calories, like you're going to lose weight because you haven't had breakfast, forget it. Everybody who loses weight and keeps it off has breakfast, and you should have some protein at breakfast. Sleep, we talked about. Don't put yourself in vulnerable situations. Forethought. Too many decisions deplete willpower. Isn't that interesting? So I don't know, some of you are probably like me and you get 400 emails a day. After you're like through the first 50, you have to take a break. Otherwise, what you start doing is you start saying no to everybody because it's just easy. And when your blood sugar goes low, you just say no. So there's this fascinating study from Florida where they looked at inmates going up for parole. And so they looked at people who went up for parole, same crime, at 8:30 in the morning versus 11 versus 1:30 in the afternoon versus 4. 8:30 in the morning, people got paroled more than anybody else. The next best was at 1:30. The worst was at 11, and nobody got paroled at 4. And what did it have to do with? The blood sugar of the parole board. So if you want something from someone else, feed them first. So if you want a raise from your boss, say, can we have a meeting at 8:30 in the morning? Because most people who want a raise, they don't want to talk to the boss till the end of the day. Because, you know, they're like embarrassed and anxious. And if they say no, they just want to like, you know, slink home. It's a bad strategy. Do it first thing in the morning or the first thing after lunch, right? But knowing the odds, I'd do it first thing in the morning. And if you want something nice from your wife, feed her first. Never make an important decision when you're hungry or tired. And never shop in the grocery store before dinner, because you're going to buy all sorts of bad stuff. Okay, step number 7. My goal in being here today is to help create brain smart champions. I want you to join me and be a champion for the health not only of your brain, but for the brains of the people you love. So how do we do that? You have to love your brain. But then you also have to get them to love their brains. So you see my 8-year-old running around here today? She totally loves her brain. She and I have played a game, right, Chloe, since she was 2. This is good for my brain or bad for my brain. On amonsolution.com, we actually have Chloe's game. And you see all these balloons come up, and you click on the ones that are good for your brain, and you let the ones go that are bad for your brain. So if I say avocados, what do you think? Thumbs up, right? And if I say blueberries, she'll say, are they organic? Because non-organic blueberries hold more toxins than anything else. Organic, 2 thumbs up, because they're brain berries, right? Chocolate chip cookies, oh no. Rocky Road, no. And I was so proud of her. One Christmas, they were making cookies at school. And, and she's part of it. And the teacher said, well, you can go, all the kids, you can go get the cookies. And Chloe just sat there. And she's like, Chloe, you can go get the cookies. She said, I don't want one. It makes me feel bad. So she's already connecting what she eats to how she feels. And it's not about you, right? In the United States, everybody thinks it's about you, right? It's about me. I can make any decision that I want. Except your behavior totally affects your children's behavior. Your behavior changes your genes and changes the next generation. It's not about you. It's about generations of you. So when you think about the habits you engage in, are those habits you want to model, teach, and influence through your genes? You have to know. I know some of this is upsetting, but use it to do something good. When I read about the dinosaur syndrome, I was totally upset. Protect and nurture the brains of everybody in your environment, which means we encourage sleep and exercise and new learning, and we do it as a family. Brain health baseline assessments, everybody should get their brain. If not scanned, at least tested. Nutrition is critical. You're going to get a great course in that, and you want to be a champion. Because if you teach this, you know it. It's one of the reasons I love what I do, because I'm always learning on how to make myself better. So, when I was finishing one of my recent books on the connection between physical health and mental health, I went to our church. So Tana and I and Chloe went to our church in Newport Beach, and I told Tana, drop Chloe off at Children's Church and I'll save us seats. And as I walked toward the sanctuary, I saw hundreds of donuts for sale for charity. Now, I've been going to church basically since I was born. And I've seen them, but this was the first day I became really upset about them. And then as I walked around the corner from the donuts, I saw bacon and sausage cooking on the grill. And now I'm irritated. And as I walked into the sanctuary, it's a big church, they were cooking hundreds of hot dogs for after church. And now I'm just freaked out. And as I sat down, the minister started talking about the ice cream festival they had there the night before. And now I'm furious. And as Tana found me in church, I'm on my phone typing. And she hates this thing, just hates it. She thinks it's the other woman. And so she gave me that look that only your wife can give you. Like, why the hell are you on that thing in church? And so I showed her what I was writing. Go to church. Get donuts, bacon, sausage, hot dogs, ice cream. This is now all in caps. They have no idea they're sending people to heaven early. This is not the plan. And I was furious, and I prayed that Sunday fervently that God would use me to create brain-healthy churches. And then no lie, and it doesn't always happen like this. 2 weeks later, Pastor Rick Warren from Saddleback Church called. He said he had baptized 867 people a few weeks before, and he realized halfway through when his back started to hurt that he's fat. The whole church is fat. And he said, I heard you on public television talking about the dinosaur syndrome. He said to me, I never really could relate to getting healthy for my heart, just didn't care. And to live longer, I'm a pastor, I'm going to heaven. That didn't do it for me. And he said, to be sexier. He said, look at me, I'm already sexy. He said, but when I heard you say, as your weight goes up, the size of your brain goes down. He said, you had me, because I realized that's my influence. And so together with my friends Mehmet Oz and Mark Hyman, we put together a 52-week program for Saddleback called the Daniel Plan, God's prescription for your health. So Saddleback is one of the largest churches in America. Pastor Warren wrote The Purpose-Driven Life, sold 40 million copies worldwide. It was the world's best-selling book 4 years in a row. And I'm thinking to myself, now that is a seriously cool answer to prayer. We had 15,000. So we kicked off the program January 15th, 2011. 15,000 people signed up for the program. I got them to get rid of the donuts at church because they were as bad as anywhere else. And the results have just been spectacular. In fact, I spent last week talking to Time Magazine. They're going to do a story on the Daniel Plan. As a church, after the first 12 months, we've lost 250,000 pounds. People report improved energy, focus, creativity, sleep and mood, reductions in stress, blood pressure, blood sugar, sexual dysfunction, and many medications. There's a Daniel Plan menu at Saddleback. Tana was one of the coaches there. It was so cool. It is. Pastor Warren's down 50 pounds, stronger than ever, no junk food for over a year, dramatically improved his own cognitive function. And the plan is to export this plan globally to 1 billion people starting this year. We are so excited. Think you can't do this? I want you to meet Steve. So 640 pounds, depressed, suicidal, 25-year addiction to alcohol and nicotine, sleep apnea, hypertension, diabetes, and chronic pain that tortured him day and night. He's on 10 medications. Whenever Steve would fall, 1 or 2 people could never get him up. He would have to call 911 for a team of people to help him. So he falls at home, calls 911. He's suicidal, but he can't get upstairs to get his gun. And in the hospital, he decides, I either have to get well or I'm going to kill myself. His sister sees me on public television in North Carolina, my show, Change Your Brain, Change Your Body. She buys him the package, and he just does everything I say. You know, it's interesting. Some of you afterwards, when we do the book signing, you're going to go, Dr. Amen, what's the one thing I should do? You should stop being stupid. Do them all. And Steve just did them all. And the people I have, I don't know, thousands of stories like Steve, but this is just the coolest one. Because in 4 months on this program, Steve lost 160 pounds. His doctor told him if he could get down to 400 pounds, he could then have the gastric bypass surgery. And he looked at the doctor. Steve's a bright guy. He said, if I get down to 400 pounds, I'm just going to keep going. And that he has. So 24 months later, he has lost 400 pounds. He weighs 240. He's lost his diabetes and pain. His memory, mood, energy is better. He's addiction-free, and he's off 8 medications. I know that you can do this. None of this is hard. It's just changing your mindset. Oh, I have to deprive myself, to I have to stop poisoning myself. If you had $1 million racehorse, would you ever feed it junk food? Only if you were an idiot. I want you to love yourself so much more.